You know, everyone talks about a dash panel install, but they never go through the entire setup of all the parts and pieces required to install a dash in a car that has absolutely nothing. So let's do that today. What's going on, guys? Matt over here, Lethal Garage, and today we are back with more 71 content. As you guys know, building a 1971 Camaro from the ground up, and today we're gonna be tackling not just the dash pad, but the entire dash assembly, parts, pieces, everything. As you may not know, this car was purchased just gutted. There was nothing. Check out an image here. You can see what it looked like interior wise. There's nothing there. So I had to start from scratch. I had to find all the parts and pieces. There was a gentleman on Instagram who was a huge help, second generation Camaro parts. I'm gonna put a link down below. He finds and restores or sells used second gen Camaro car parts that help fill the gaps that the big companies don't, because these kind of parts and pieces aren't something that anyone reproduces. You have to either find them off second gens in a junkyard, find secondhand parts laying around somewhere in someone's garage. Yeah, I had to do that. I've gone online, like Camaro Central does have a few parts and pieces that I'm going to show today, but overall, you guys, I got my assembly book out, but you can see we're going to go through all the parts and pieces for the most part today, along with the main bracketry and all that stuff, because my car literally came with none of it. Now, I've kind of mocked up the brackets in place here, but I'm going to go through each individual part because I'm still missing screws, bolts, and all that other stuff, and I'm going to have to run to a parts store to get the missing items I need. I'm starting to feel like 1/4 inch short, long, medium length bolts with, you know, nylock nuts is the way to go for a lot of things. I'm just gonna buy packages because I'm having to run to the store and I'm buying ones and twosies, when in reality, if I would have just bought 3 different lengths with all the lock nuts and nylocks, whatever, I probably would not have to go to the store again. There's just so many things. The other curveball is the dash panel. So I got my dash up here on the toolbox, the bolts that mount basically from this side. So I just need to get this side in for today's installation. I already have this side on. I'll go through that here in a moment, but yeah, getting the right screws to get this to mount and all that stuff has kind of been a nightmare. So let's get to it. To kick things off, I'm just gonna lay out all the parts and pieces, give you an overview of what's required. I'm basically getting to this as if your vehicle is completely stripped like mine was. So in my instance, the brackets were still in place that some of these brackets connect to. They're basically welded to the body or attached to the body. I don't see any bolts holding them, so they're welded. But let's just get into it. So first and foremost, you have your passenger side main bracket. As you can see, it's welded in place. You're going to be attaching multiple parts to this piece right here. You have your inner brace, which is right here, again, welded to the body. And then you got another brace up against the outside driver corner that's gonna hold the other brace. Now, that other brace does connect to the steering column attachment point as well. So you'll wanna make sure all of those are factory in position. So in this instance, this is the driver's side brace. So this is cradling into that bracket up against the body. And this upper corner is mounting to the steering column. We'll mount that here in a second. This is a combination bracket, so it's hanging, and I'll show you on the actual guide. You can see this is the bracket that's welded to the car. This is this bracket here, right here. And then this bracket here is this bracket. These bolt together, and they create an attachment point. So the bottom portion of the dash connector here on this side connects to this bottom corner, and then there's a big metal piece that goes across, and I'll show you that briefly so you can see it right here. This metal piece goes across and attaches to both sides, in which that's what this panel right here is for. Now let's go ahead and get these in the car and walk through some of the things that I've done, because I can't find any details of certain bolt sizes and screw sizes other than what mounts these to the vehicle. Let's get to it. You will need a gamut of bolts. I have like 10 different bolt kits now for this car, so I grabbed a couple that I knew that would thread in. I found these ones with a collar or a washer already on it, really good for these mounting points here to this bracket, and most of the other ones are all your typical 1/2" body panel bolts. Not a big fan of the pointed ends of items underneath the dash, especially when you're going to be doing wiring and stuff and reaching up under there. You don't want to get poked, so I tried to get as many of these flat top bolts as I could and made them work. First bracket mounts in position pretty easily. There's a screw that comes from the underside, and you'll notice that these holes are not perfectly round holes. That's because you need some movement when you're installing this. So this is hard to do one-handed, so I'll go ahead and put the top one in first so it doesn't slide on me. But in some instances you may need to jimmy with this bottom position. Don't ask me why, but you know, not everything's built with modern day tolerances. So, and there's going to be a lot of loose fitting of items in the get-go anyways, because you're going to need that movement putting stuff together. And so looking at the diagram, this sandwiches together like this. It's kind of an interesting design. I was always curious, at least when I first was looking at it, why it was separated that way. And primarily I believe they did it because tolerances. There's a lot of wiggle room needed for this specific piece. And again, also having the big collared bolts here help fill in these ginormous holes, at least covering them up, not like you'll ever see them. And then again, you're going to be bolting this to the vehicle. And this is so far up out of the way, I'll use my little pointy bolts, but these are going to go into the vehicle. So let's go ahead and install this bracket. So this bracket literally just bolts into position here. And again, I'm just doing finger tight for now, but this bracket's pretty loose as it needs to be, because, well, you'll see why in just a second. Just like the passenger side, this bracket has an upper placement that needs to be threaded in. And again, I'm just going to do that by hand so I get this bottom one in. This bottom side does not have movement because this one becomes permanently fixated to the welded steering column side. And again, just finger tight for the purposes of this video to show you exactly how it's all going to go in. But that gives us most of our bracketry in position, and now we need the main support bracket running along the bottom. Now this is where I had to kind of make stuff up because I could not find any place anywhere that sold the screw kit or screws specifically for this part here. So I ended up going to the hardware store. I ended up getting a 4.7 metric, I believe these are 3/4 inch, maybe they're 1/2 inch size bolts with nylocks and washers, just to be able to fasten this in position and get it locked in. I did find out in some of my earlier research that this portion here might require a longer bolt because the bolt will actually go through this metal tab into here, so I'll have to lock in there. But there's movement side to side. As you can see, all these are slotted, so that way you can get perfect adjustability. And then the other side is these locations here. I had a heck of a time finding out what kind of fasteners are required, because if you look at the dialogue, it just shows you, hey look, something fastens into there. And then if you go back, if you look down below where it actually mounts to, it basically shows, hey, number 1, okay, these are WAS, there's a part number, but I did some searching, couldn't find anything on this one. So I have a couple different screws and a couple different setups that will work. I found that this package, where is it? I found that this dash package of screws is actually the perfect size for these metal brackets here. I don't know if there's supposed to be some sort of fastener or something like that. It doesn't show anything like that, like clips or, you know, kind of like these things. It doesn't show anything like that on there, so I'm just gonna go with screws that are gonna fit tight. And I do want to highlight, that's been my biggest frustration in building not only the dash and all the assemblies and the brackets is the lack of full bolt kits. Now, I called National Parts Depot, I called OER, called a couple other places and just said, hey look, why does no one sell a full dash kit that has like everything, all the parts and pieces for the lowers, the uppers, all the other parts and pieces for the dash pad and parts that attach to it across the bottom? And the answer I got was, there's so many different variants depending on the year and depending on what plant it came out of. We just can't guarantee it's gonna be the same thing, and it's a big headache. And I'm like, well, maybe someone should do some due diligence. There's enough people now that are restoring second gen Camaros, in my mind, at least from what I've seen across multiple groups, are replacing dash pads to where a lot of people want to probably replace their hardware as well. And it's just been really frustrating going down that path, trying to find the very specific hardware. But I think I have a mismatch of a ton of different hardware kits from all over the place, and I don't even remember where they're all from. I mean, like Camaro Central, National Parts Depot, Classic Industries, I've purchased stuff from all of them, and I think I'm still short on bolts. So I went down to Hank's Hardware here locally and picked up a ton of just kind of similar bolts or stainless steel or self-tappers that I think will work and will allow me to get the job done. And I'll highlight those when I get to them. But back to this one, you're gonna need technically 4 of these, but I removed one because you're not gonna be able to install it until you get the dash and all that stuff in. It's a bolt that you put in after the fact. So we'll go ahead and get this main bar attached with just these 3 items, and we'll do it by hand. So that way we know it's in position and it gives us the adjustability that we need. Okay, so this is really hard to do with one hand, so I didn't record doing this, but I took the bracket there. You can see this first slot, it's gonna eventually tie into these holes in here, but I attached this one here and it will slide side to side. Again, this bolt is still sliding side to side, so literally it's just hanging there with the one bolt. But the other side is, this comes up to that bracket, and again, you'll see there's slotted holes, so we can thread it in and still have up and down and kind of back and forth, up and down movement. So let's get those in there. So there you have it. I have it in there, just finger tight. You can see it's very loose. Kind of scary, but don't worry, we'll tighten this all up once we get the dash verified and fitted. And again, there's gonna be another one of those bolts that's gonna marry up to here, but we'll get to that once we get the dash loosely in place. And that brings us to the actual dash. There's a lot of stuff to talk about this, so I apologize. The next part's gonna be a little long-winded, but we'll try to get through it really quickly. Dash pads. Now, I did the due diligence. I ordered an OER and I ordered an MPD dash setup. And when I did that and they both showed up, I thought I was gonna be smart and I was gonna create a video showing the differences between the two. And come to find out, OER has copied MPD's updated dash pad. So when you buy the OER setup, it's almost exactly the same as the MPD. I do think the MPD setup's better overall, just because of the directions and the hardware and everything they've provided in it. OER doesn't necessarily give you all those details, but they're basically identical at this point. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of the older ones floating around, probably sitting on a shelf somewhere at some retailer, so depending on where you order it from. All I know is I ordered the MPD custom exclusive one, and I ordered a new OER one, and they were basically identical. It was baffling to me, but it is what it is. Now, for this specific video, we are going to attach the lower assembly that houses the dash and I believe the radio and the air vent. Is that the air vent? I think that's an air vent. Yes. And it goes in pretty simply. The dash hardware kit's going to come in with these little metal clips right here. You're going to slide these into the 5 positions. There's going to be 5 of these bolts that are 1/4-inch heads. They just lock it right in position. And that's going to allow us to get to the next steps to get the actual tabs for the upper dash installed and actually see how the dash slides into the vehicle and get it in position. Now, in this video, I'm not going to fully install flush fit the dash, because once you actually slide it in position and snap it in, it's a little difficult to pull out. So I still have a lot to do in regards to installing the vintage air and getting all the wiring and all that stuff. But what I will do is I will get the dash mocked up to the point to basically where you're popping it on and you're done. It's in position. So it's going to be 95% the way there. The only step we're not going to complete today is pushing this against the cowl, because you'll see the metal tabs, they slide into these holes right here. Sorry, it's a little dark because it's black. So they slide into here, and there's a little metal tab on the back side that clicks into these holes right here and holds it tight. So I'll show you what that looks like here. Now, the number one question you get about all the aftermarket parts, OER, MPD, doesn't even matter which company you go with, is fitment. How is it compared to factory? And the fitment is just about as close to factory as you're gonna get. There's gaps, there's issues, there's everything. If you go and look at any second generation car that hasn't been taken apart, there's gaps, there's issues, there's whatever. And keep in mind, they made these parts off of molds from the original, so they're gonna fit like the original, which is not like pristine, custom, perfect. So there is gonna be some gaps. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt these up. I started these two outside edges here, but I'm gonna show you where the gaps are, and then I'm gonna also, once we put it in the car, show you how you're not even gonna see those gaps that are there. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these all up, get the rest of the screws in, and then show you that step. If you have a ratcheting tool like this from Milwaukee, it comes in really handy for these. I just do it one-handed for the most part. Don't over torque them. So now that I got the lower trim panel in place, I'll show you what it looks like from the front and the number one gap that you're gonna see. This portion right down in here is probably the number one issue that I see people griping about. They're like, oh, the fitment's terrible. Again, look at any of the older cars. They look just like this, if not worse. You can kind of see here, the lower portion sits below the actual dash pad. And then as this comes out, it evens out and marries. There's a little gap that goes across. But overall, once this is installed on the car, you never see this. You can't see any of this whatsoever unless you go and lay down on your floorboards and look up. I mean, it's funny that what people complain about, but it is what it is. You're not gonna find better. The factories fit just the same, if not worse. So leave your comments below, or even links to images of yours if you can, just to show people exactly what they're dealing with. Now, there are some things with the dash pad that I will say are not perfect. If you look at the edge of this, you can see it's kind of worn down and the texture finish is missing. I think this is, I don't know what side effect this is of or why this happened, but it is an issue on my specific dash pad. Are they all like that? I'm not sure. Overall, I did knock the red plastic thing was halfway fallen out of mine for the safety belt. Where is it? It's somewhere over here. Yeah, seat belts. Fasten seat belts. So when it lights up, you can see it. It popped out. I'm tempted to take this down and have something custom put there instead of the fasten seatbelt sign, but we'll see. We'll see if we even run a light back there. We probably will. We have the wiring for it, but yeah. So the dash pad is assembled for the most part, except for the lower portion, because we have the steering wheel. We're not going to put that portion on until we get this in position, because you're not going to be able to get your steering wheel through that. And then there's a side piece here for the air vent that bolts right up. They're going to be a little complicated to get these bolted in position once it's in the car, but it's not the end of the world or impossible. This one would be once it's in the car, so you're going to want to get that lower big portion mounted, and then we can get the glove box and all that stuff in. We're probably going to be hacking this up anyways for a custom radio setup for the car anyways. So yeah, this might all have to come out no matter what. We'll find out. But let's get this dash pad in place and show you how it will line up and how it goes in. So we can't install the dash pad with anything until we get the actual mounting clips that go onto the cowl. Now, your original dash pads are only going to have 3. I actually have an original setup here. And the way that it's set up is the smaller tabs on the original are on the passenger side, and the one longer tab is towards basically the center-ish portion on this one here. Now, because this is the upgraded pad, it has the upgraded placements, so you're not going to use these factory mounts, you'll use the updated mounts here. Now, you're going to want to make sure that when you install these, that the metal tabs are facing up. And when I say metal tabs, it's these tabs right here. So they'll sit on the actual set up like this to where the bulging side of the clip is facing up. So that way when you drop this into the car, the actual cowl is sinking into the dash pad underneath this area, sitting in this groove, and then this metal clip mounts to this portion right here. So you can see the big metal clip slides into this slot right here, and then the metal clip will actually catch and sit in this opening right there, holding the dash pad to the cowl. So in this instance, the two smaller clips towards the driver's side, the longer clips on the passenger side, and I'm putting these in upside down. And they're gonna come with, if you get them from the National Parts Depot, they come with the washer and the nuts. Now these are not lock nuts. I'll probably come back and put some blue Loctite on these, just because I would hate to see these vibrate off over time. But that's just me. Do it how you see fit for your specific build. Now I'm just gonna hand tighten these for the time being. You will be able to reach under the car and fully tighten these. Again, a little bit of movement is gonna be required to move side to side, and you'll understand why once you put it in there, because if you look at how these slide into the clips and where that metal tab is going, it's not very conducive. It kind of is at a weird angle and it's not straight on. So I'm gonna leave these tight enough to where it's gonna hold it. You know, it's not gonna make it flex and break, but it's not too tight to where I can't get the cowl to slide into position. Okay, so now that we have the dash pad in a good position, we'll go ahead and slide it on that side. But now we gotta get these metal clips to slide in. And if you have a helper, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. You can get them bent into position, and basically you'll just push this on all the way. Now in this instance, I'm not gonna fully install it, but you'll just basically slam the pad in. Those little tabs will grab on these hole positions here, and then you can go underneath and tighten them all in position. So now that we have the dash roughly in place, you can kind of see how this metal bracket comes into place. So on the back side of this plastic, there's a groove that this metal bracket lines up to. And basically you're gonna slide this side to side, hence the play, so it lines up with the holes in the three positions on this side, so you can put the screws in, and then it will also line up with this bracket here to go into the hole on this one. Now in this instance, there's gonna be another piece here, so I'm not gonna mount that just yet, but overall, you can see how this all lines up and starts coming together pretty easily. But now already, you can kind of see how your car is gonna look with the dash in the vehicle. Now this is the second time I've now seen my car with the dash in there, and oh my gosh, is it a difference from when I first got it. Here's a picture of when we first got the car to now. Holy cow, what a difference. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for my first part of the dash install. Obviously there's a ton more pieces to install. I'm gonna try to do the rest of it in a second version here. It's gonna be a little bit later down the path in between a whole bunch of other videos, so I apologize for that now. We just got so much other stuff to get done before I can get what I'm calling the frosting or the icing on the car. And that's really what those other parts are. We just don't want them to be in the way so we can install the AC system and all the other stuff without a problem. So hopefully you guys found this video informational. I'll put as many links to parts as I can down below so you guys can find these a little bit easier. I spent a ton of time and purchased a lot of products multiple times. It's just not conducive for building a car, buying things 3-4 times. It's not fun. Apologies, it's still over 100 degrees out, so sweating like a pig here in the Lethal Garage, but it is what it is. So dash pad lined up, we got it mocked up, basically in position. You can see how it all snaps in, and we'll see final fitment and everything once we get all of the parts and pieces in. But again, you can see how there's adjustability to get everything lined up. Once you get it all bolted in, lined up, go in and tighten all those nuts and bolts, and you're good to go. Then you can start getting your bezel in, your gauges, all that stuff. Get her done. Thanks for checking out the video. Hit that subscribe button if you guys want more content around 71 Camaros or even 6th gen Camaros. And who knows, maybe we'll have other cars in the future. But until next time, guys, I'll see you on the road.